Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 4 stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. Before we start, it's time to address the elephant in the room. Yes, we have completely rebranded KCC, Karma Comment Chameleon, to Karma Stories. The long story short on the rebrand is that this will allow us to rank better in search and hopefully bring in a lot more new people, because it's a lot easier to search that than to search for Karma Comment Chameleon, or for KCC, which actually doesn't appear anywhere on the channel, so it wasn't coming up in search. In fact, if you search KCC on YouTube, you get the Kingdom City Church, which I don't think would approve of a lot of the stories that we read here. Rest assured, nothing else on the channel is changing. We still have the same stories from the same subreddits, and my comments after all the stories, which you either love or hate, and I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's jump right into today's stories. This story comes to us from Edemnian. Track FMLA time? You betcha! So, not my malicious compliance, but I was orchestrating it with my wife. So, my wife has some health problems, and has fully certified and signed off on FMLA. That's the Family Medical Leave Act, for those not in the US. This is the big time federal government, you do not mess with this medical leave. Job knew this when she was hired and they had flexible schedules, so whenever she would have a flare up, she'd just flex it. Couple hours off now, then she'd make the time back up later in the week. Boss knew this, was cool with this, everything was great. Cue new boss coming in. Couple months go by, new boss tells my wife repeatedly, "You're doing great, no notes, keep doing what you're doing." Now, new boss is an old school boomer Karen, and my wife has 2 big brass ones and isn't afraid to tell a Karen to sit down and be quiet, and refuses to take her crap. So, total shock to everyone, a few months later, without notice or warning, called into HR. HR tries to go on about the FMLA stuff, saying she hasn't been filing her FMLA claims, and that she's scamming the company, and blah blah blah. So she tells them, "One moment, I know an FMLA expert with 15 years of experience. Let me call him. Hey honey, you got a minute?" Yeah, did I mention I've worked with FMLA at a national corporate level for years and years? Finally came in handy. "No dear, FMLA counts as time worked. You've been flexing to make up your time, so it cannot be counted against your FMLA limit. If you need to take FMLA, it's hours worked and does not need to be made up under federal law. They can insist you use PTO alongside it, but they cannot tell you to make it up or they're committing a felony." I could hear the dead silence on the phone. Wife finally speaks up. "So if the problem is that I haven't been properly applying for FMLA, I'll be happy to do so and stop making my time up. I'm gonna have to push these projects back since I won't have as much time to work on them as I thought, since I won't be allowed to make up my time anymore. If you want to authorize some overtime, we can work that out." Turns out Karen Boss just didn't like the fact that my wife is work from home, and she couldn't micromanage her. Thought she'd get HR to help scare her straight. They were absolutely not prepared for someone to know more about their claims than they did. Karen Boss tried a few more times to throw her weight around. Each time my wife responded with some variation of, "I am not legally allowed to do that, and I have been instructed by corporate to file all time as protected FMLA." Threats of discipline were met with, "Go ahead, I'm the only one you've got who can do X job. I work here because I enjoy it, or at least I used to. Write me up if you feel the need, but please know that when you do, that will be the start of my 2 weeks notice." And she stuck to her guns. Anytime she needs to take FMLA time off, she does so, files everything properly, and Karen Boss can just sit and stew, because there's not a darn thing she can do about it. It's been about a month now. Boss Karen has finally realized that she's got about as much weight as a feather. HR has gone completely silent, and things have overall gotten much better for the wife, since she's got much less stress now. Karen Boss keeps communication short, direct, and to the point, just how my wife likes it. Could they fire her for some unrelated reason once the current crunch is done? Sure, but she's already got bites from multiple other companies, and we can afford to not have her work for a month or two if worse comes to worst. And we, of course, have a giant cover your butt folder full of names and dates and everything else where Karen boss tried to retaliate, made for a hostile workplace, etc. Know your rights, people, and do not be afraid to stand up for yourself. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Global Dude. It says, Karen must have felt despondent when even HR is unable to help her. OP responded to this one and said, oh yeah, wasn't really relative to the main story, but there were a few other complaints Karen tried to throw in. Wife had all the emails where Karen told her to do the things. They tried to hit her with, well, you need to do it this way. She'd hit back with, well, the employee handbook says it's handled that way. So if you can just get me an updated copy of the rules saying it should be done the way you're asking, that'd be great. HR is never your friend, and they will not come to a meeting unprepared if they've got anything on you. So pro tip, you get called into a meeting with them and they don't have a giant folder full of stuff that they're constantly pulling from and referencing, then they've got nothing. Push back. Ask for everything in writing. Make a paper trail. It's amazing how fast issues go away when somebody has to sign their name to the paperwork. Another commenter down below called Fallen Sinful said, I got pushed out of a company due to intermittent FMLA. FMLA was approved, and then I started getting daily meetings about typing too loud and aggressive, or not an overly cheerful morning greeting, such stupid things, etc. Yeah, they just wanted me gone, so I left. F that. Glad your wife knows her rights and sticks up for them. OP responded and said, if you ever run into this again, start keeping a log. Every single time it happens, you record the date, the time, and the names of everyone present in the room that you can remember once you're in a safe place. Make sure that none of it is kept on corporate equipment, as IT can and will log into your work computer and delete anything that makes them look bad. Same goes for any emails you think are bad. BCC a Gmail account of yours with them so you have copies that aren't on the company server. And then you smile at them every time they pull that crap, because every instance is one more nail in the coffin when you decide to tell HR, I'm hiring a lawyer for hostile workplace and harassment, and drop a copy of your folder on the desk. Do you have to actually get a lawyer? Nope. Most of the time they'll back down once they see the receipts. But it's great for the, we're going to discuss my severance package now. If I like what you have to say, then I'll consider my dispute here settled. If I don't, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. HR's job is to protect the company from you. They can make things happen like you wouldn't believe in order to do that. Even if you're not dealing with FMLA, keeping documentation of anything that happens that you don't think is right is a very good idea. Times, dates, who said what, everything in writing, possibly even a witness or two would really help in that case. We say it all the time here, document, 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 cover your butt. This story comes to us from Manglewood, when the secret backfires. Around 2008, I was a radiology assistant in a mammography unit, meaning I was the person who ushered in patients, showed them where to put their belongings, gives them the gown and instructions. Another part of my job was keeping the radiology station clean and tidy, so that work surfaces were clear and sanitary. Around this same time, The Secret was huge, and my coworkers were all way into it. For those who don't know, it is a ridiculous pseudoscientific method pushed by Oprah Winfrey that promised you can get whatever you want simply by visualizing and asking the universe for it. The ugly side of this fairy tale thinking is that if bad things happen to you, it's your fault, because you invented it by putting bad energy out into the universe. I found it wildly inappropriate that healthcare professionals believed that breast cancer victims had caused their own cancers through negative thinking. I fought with a few of the radiology techs about it, but was completely outnumbered, so I tried to just keep my head down, focus on patients, and do my job, which included tidying up their O magazines, secret books, and other secret-related materials that they would leave strewn all over the counters. Since they all hated me for not being in on their secret clique, they decided to hang up on me and go to the managers with complaints about my attitude. I was called out of work into a disciplinary ambush meeting where I explained my side of things. One of the higher-up managers totally agreed with me and actually defended me, but the conclusion of the meeting, I was told not to touch anyone else's stuff because there were complaints that I was shoving magazines into the corners and threw away somebody's copy of The Secret. I really wish I had, but I actually did not do that. It was a complete lie. So by complaining about me, my idiotic coworkers effectively took away the part of my job which was cleaning up after them. I was no longer allowed to touch their magazines, so they piled up 2 inches deep on every surface, plus empty bottles and yogurt containers, used napkins, cafeteria trays, popcorn detritus, and all sorts of other trash. The workstation looked like a landfill. They would be absolutely seething about it and glaring at me, but I would sit there reading, happily doing absolutely nothing about it since I wasn't allowed to touch their stuff. OP, this is a perfect opportunity. You can tell them if they visualize the workspace being clean, that it might just clean up itself. See if it does actually work. The secret. Making people believe that they deserve to have good things for faking being a good person. This story comes to us from Glittering Growth 246. Deny the flexibility you promised? Fine. Cover my shifts and still have to pay me. I was in a supervisory role as a charge nurse. I'd worked in this position for about 3 years. I had great reviews and earned consistent raises and performance bonuses. I approached my managers and requested that they agree to a flexible schedule if I worked on my master's degree. I wasn't asking for time off, I just wanted them to adjust my schedule when it came time for my practical rotations. They agreed as they wouldn't be losing any productivity and would be gaining a nurse practitioner for the system. About a year after I started the program, it became apparent I was going to need to divorce my wife. We'd been married for many years, it was quite a blow. I called the employee assistance program and got some therapy that was very helpful. My managers also suggested I apply for FMLA leave due to their concern for my mental health. I was very grateful. I had been working for this system for a number of years and had many hours of PTO saved up, but I figured the FMLA leave would be a smart thing to be approved for in case court times were scheduled when I was working. I was approved for up to 40 hours per week for a year. About a year into my master's program, it became necessary for me to step down from my role as a charge and take a staff nurse position. My main manager was livid. She took it very personally and stopped talking to me and greeting me. I was very hurt initially. As my practical rotations were about to start, I reminded my managers of their promise to be flexible with my schedule. They denied my request for flexibility and began to schedule me almost entirely for the times I would request off. At first, I was frustrated and very hurt that they did this, but I remembered that I was approved for FMLA leave. FMLA is a special form of leave and cannot be denied. As my managers were not keeping their promises, it was with great satisfaction I began to call off every morning I needed for my rotations. I didn't give them any advance notice because I was not required to. It was with even greater satisfaction I learned my managers began to have to cover my shifts themselves on occasion. As I had PTO hours saved up, I still got paid as well. I finished all of my rotations in this manner and took a job at a different system after I graduated. I worked at the new system for a few years before I was hired back at my old system as a provider. I loved seeing the look on my old manager's face when I took my first shift at her hospital as a provider and not under her chain of command. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Idaho No. It says, nurses make malicious compliance truly malicious sometimes. Do not F with the nurses. They will somehow still do patient care well while destroying every other system and or person around them. If your nurses are union, multiply this by 100. OP responded and said, you're definitely not wrong. We can be a spiteful bunch. That's what happens when you have highly educated people who are trained in advocacy. We effing advocate. So many people in the comment section are just talking about OP's work. I just want to take a moment to say, OP, I hope you're taking care of your mental health after your divorce. I know that can be a really tough thing to go through. Glad to hear you are getting therapy, but I really hope you are looking out for you at this point. This story comes to us from Hadamai. Rewrite your prices to gouge money from students and bleed money out. A tutorial. This is from over a decade ago when I was a student, but it never fails to make me smile even now. The curriculum I was in is very particular to my country. It's a 2-year intensive program that usually ends in admission to the best schools in the country. This curriculum, like most of its kind, was hosted by a public school with a much larger population of high school students. And, important part, it was heavily STEM oriented. This high school being downtown in a big city in a large area of nothing had, in addition to the usual lunchroom, boarding facilities that were mostly used by students in this curriculum, as the high school population usually lived in town. When I arrived, the price structure was the following. Boarding students paid a fixed price of about 62 euros a week for the room and all meals Monday morning through Saturday morning. Other students could eat lunch for about $4.30 a lunch with a prepaid card. Easy enough. I don't remember the exact prices, but it was in this range. In January of my second year, all boarding students were made to attend a meeting about new price structure that would count everything separately. The room would be 29 euro a week, lunch and dinners would be 4.20 a pop, and breakfast would be 2 euros a pop. The resulting price would be an across-the-board 2% increase, which is negligible. Keywords being across the board here. I still don't know who they expected to fool. Obviously, good STEM students would figure out instantly that for them, the week would now be 82 euros, so a 33% increase. There was an uproar. The rest of the meeting was hearing over and over it was validated by the school board, as if boarding students had any representation there. The parents were too far and the students too busy. And of course, other parents and students would approve of what was essentially a discount for them. So we were stuck with the new pricing. Okay, but we don't pay for the meals if we don't go, huh? Remember, the school was downtown, and it appears the students needed much less the breakfast, lunch, and dinner on site, where there are tons of options in walking distance at a lesser price, up to and including stocking up things in the rooms for breakfast. The kitchen was drowning in stock and bleeding money through the nose. The school being public, buying the food was not a very flexible process they could change week after week. It only lasted a few weeks. They came back to the old pricing structure, albeit a little higher, 65 euros per week I believe. I still call it a win. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Harry WWC. It says, so more a 5% increase and not the negligible 2% that was actually 33%. Nice little earner if you can pull it off. I can almost hear in the back office, hey, they're just a bunch of kids, they'll never know the difference. Or the equivalent in relevant Euro language. Wait a minute, so these are students that are working their way towards the best schools in the country, going through a program that's really only for the smart kids, and they thought they could pull the wool over their eyes and raise the prices without them making a stink about it? I mean, come on. Did you know every Karma Stories video is also produced in podcast form? You can search for Karma Stories on every major podcasting platform. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.